Good evening, everyone. My name is Aileen Cassinetto. I'm the Poet Laureate of San Mateo County in California. It is my honor and great pleasure to read with Trapeta Mayson, the Poet Laureate of Philadelphia. Trapeta is an award-winning poet, having received various grants, awards, and fellowships, including a Pew Fellowship in Literature, a Leeway Transformation Award, a Leeway Art and Change Grant, and Pennsylvania Council on the Arts grants. She is also a Canem, Callaloo, and an Aspen Institute Fellow. She is the author of She Was Once Herself and Mocha Melodies. Trapeta was executive director of Historic Germantown and vice president of Please Touch Museum. She is currently the chief program officer of a mental health agency in Kensington, Philadelphia. Welcome, Trapeta.
Thank you for having me today. It is an absolute pleasure.
I'm in my second year as Poet Laureate, and when I started, I knew I wanted to raise more awareness on social justice issues through poetry. It's a huge undertaking and one I would not be able to do without building strong community connections. What are you hoping to accomplish as Poet Laureate?
Wow, I think when I just started my tenure in January, so I have 2 years in this wonderful position. Of course, starting in January, who knew what would be happening in the world right now? So, major things from, the pandemic to racism racism has always happened, but just to recent events. So for me, initially, my focus was on working with young people and adults on issues around mental health. In my job, I work a lot with people around mental health diagnoses, mental illness, not only for the individual, but those that are impacted by it as well, and just the community at large. So I just wanted to raise awareness about that, and particularly as it impacts young people. There are a lot of people dealing with a range of mental illnesses and diagnoses, and that was really important to me. Other part of my platform continue to be helping to amplify voices that are not normally heard. As an immigrant woman, I'm an African immigrant from Liberia. That was a big deal that I would be able to use this platform to get into a lot of different communities. This is what I hope.
Exactly. And you also mentioned a 1-800 Poets program that you were.
Yes. So Healing Verses is my project that I'm working on. And Healing Verses is just using the poetry and our platform as literary artists to expand the dialogue around mental health. So there's three components to Healing Verses. One will be a cohort of individuals, of other writers and poets who will go through a training program. Then they can eventually be able to work in community centers, public libraries, and places where we are encountering the public. And some are dealing with issues around mental health. Also, there's the Healing Verse line that will be launching this year, my first year, where I've invited a number of poets to share a verse about 2 minutes long. This was supposed to be launched on Mental Health Month, but it will be launched. They will be able to share their poem on this Healing Verse line, and the public is invited to call in daily. So like dial a poem, but with a focus really on mental health awareness, and just helping people to manage. So it's more affirmations, poems, inspiration. And hopefully that'll be launched. And then the last part of that project is a public installation, where we're going to take some of those verses and be able to create artwork near major public institutions throughout the city. So that's what I'm hoping to accomplish in 2 years. And I'm bringing with me just a number of individuals in the community, youth, adults, you name it.
Wonderful. And also, for me, poetry connects us with each other, like we're doing now, and with the world around us, outside of linear thought processes. And the more we understand, the more we can inspire change on the side of justice. So why do you think poetry matters?
Wow. Let me tell you right now, it's always been for me a source of therapy, a source of coping. And I see the impact of this in the individuals that we encounter, the individuals that are part of our community. Poetry matters not only in communities where voices are underrepresented in the literary world. For me, I'm a poet of the. I call myself a poet of the people because I read my work in barbershops, churches, subways, just places where people wouldn't ordinarily gather to hear poetry. And in every one of those places where people have said, oh, this group or that group, they're just not into poetry. Once you introduce it and you introduce it in a way that's barrier free, there's access to this, and it's not this highbrow art, people encounter it. They create their work, they share their work. And when you call someone a poet after a 45-minute workshop, at a shelter somewhere, and they're like, oh, I'm a poet, this is something that just their spirit comes alive. Poetry matters more today than any other time.
So true. I thought we'd share a few poems that speak to our time. So I think I'll go first. This poem is about hope and redemption. Still, like air, we rise toward the light, our movement widening as though in prayer, holy and urgent. I will say your name, an act of love more powerful than the weight of air or the falling of light. Like clouds speaking their truth, every heap and layer, every curl of hair, a reckoning. Still, I pray for grace to hear your story and what you know of clouds, why they shine at night, where they touch the ground, how they birth a star. Perhaps you will want to know my story and why these queries, like what will it cost to cross an inch of scorn or climb a wall of fear? How much to plow the air, to read the clouds? How much for a sip of water, a gulp of air? How much for 3 square feet of space, for the narrowest breathing place? How much for the life of my child? Still I ask, an act of grace as I rise toward the light. My second poem is titled, There Are No Kings in America. We are not that kind of country. We are sanctuary for the hungry, the homeless, the huddled, held together by an idea our immigrant fathers believed in. Rendered, it meant independence. Pursued, it kindled war, ordnance, a fighting chance. 40,000 musket balls by themselves did not shape the boundaries in which we map our days. To draw our borders, we needed more than fire cakes, more than a pound of meat with bone and gristle, or saltfish and a gill of peas. We needed the faith and grit of people who were not yet Americans. To be an American is to recognize the sacrifice of the widow and the orphan. It is to understand the weft of tent cities expecting caravans, and the heft of a child in a camp not meant for children, or sitting before a judge awaiting judgment. What do we say to the native whose lands we now inhabit? What do we say to our immigrant fathers who held certain truths to be self-evident? Do we now still pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor? There are no kings in America, only gilded men we can topple again and again. Today was the memorial service for George Floyd. In honor of Mr. Floyd and in solidarity with Black Lives Matter, I wrote this poem last night. I knew I wanted the form of a ghazal to hold my sorrow, to show that love can transcend horror and tragedy and inhumanity. This is my last poem for this evening. Ghazal for George. Minneapolis's older twin city was lost that night. Not even the patron saint of lost things could find it that night. You left your home too. You had nowhere else to go to, save for the city which went down in flames that night. I had $1 and it was my last one too. What should we have for dinner tonight? What else is there but water and mother, being and life-giving, true thing on this wild night? We can transcribe a scene for 8 minutes, make it matter. Instead, we held our breath for half a minute before we gasped that night. We have mastered the coincidence fonts, haunt want, taunt want, and went hungry that night. All day long, just wanting to get through the night. This body that is built on the power of water, of grist, of Floyd, this air, this ground, this black matter will rise again tonight. Now, to share her poetry, please welcome back the Poet Laureate of Philadelphia, Trapeta Mayson.
So this poem was written the day I learned about George Floyd's murder, and I just called it a non-poem, but I just really wanted to get the words out what I was feeling. For our tough men and soft men and kneeling men and fist upright men and those in the book men and poem writing men and teaching men and cooking and building men and screaming men and crying men and laughing men and scared men and terrified men and numb men and loving men, for all of them, for our bird watching men and knees pressed into the back of necks men and skittles eating men and jogging on the lone street men and chilling on the corner men and dragged behind pickup trucks men and shattered with bullets on the playground men and lifeless in the back of a cruiser men, for all of them. For the ones who are still here men and the how are we going to protect them men, and all of our sons and nephews are growing men and will be perceived as dangerous and a threat men, and the keeping their heads low men but still get caught out here exposed men, and the why are we perpetually mourning and burying another black men, for all of them. The still thriving men, the no turning the other cheek men, the marching and Bible men, and the soldier men, and Black Lives Matter men, and the on their own men, and family men, and lover men, and here to stay men. We hold you today. We hold you. And my second piece that I'm going to read, I wrote this during just somewhere in the midst of the pandemic. It's called We Will Make Something Out of This Too. We are the builders, the creators, and the magicians of our lives. We are the designers and the inventors of our lives, and we will make something out of this too. We strain to understand this new language. In our grave and weary lilt, in our haggard cadence, we mouth to one another stark words: distancing, isolation, loss, emptiness. Someone will ask us if we're going to be all right, and we will tell them only if we believe it. Another will ask us if we're going to get through this, and we will tell them that we have to want it bad enough to see it. We strain to manage this new way of learning ourselves. The day before the world tilted, I had claimed to be a lover of humankind. I touted my goodwill and arrogance about, bared my self-righteousness and feel-goods across my chest. And then when the world placed us in time out, I had to prove it. I had to take only my ration from the market, check on neighbors and phone friends, Press my palms against glass to see family, my hellos and goodbyes muted, my farewells and homegoings silenced. I walk these streets I know like a stranger, like a soul outside of herself. Hold my lone woman praise and worship. Be okay with passing through the same four rooms while Mahalia blankets me in song. How I got over. I've been falling and rising all of these years. But you know, my soul sits back and wonder, how did we make it over? I now know that we are builders, designers, architects of our lives. We can draft an existence one day, and when it's upended, erase, maintain the foundation, and start over the next. We are all in our dojo of life, and this world has become our sensei, and we are stealth students studying this new language, this new thing, meditating and marveling, moving and mourning, marinating and musing. Each day, another chance to practice being human. Each day, another chance to learn to master ourselves. I'm going to read my third piece, and the piece I'm going to read is from a collection that I'm working on about just immigrant experiences and voices, and particularly as it relates to young women. And this one is called Send Off. Daughters, our country, for all its promise, tends to eat its young. If you remain here, some round belly old man will mince you, or clean his teeth with your corpse. Look how they roam the villages to claim their bedmates, how they yank one daughter and then another, waving their small prey like bushmeat. See how they pluck them right off the road and out of the school halls, even before they ripen. See how they beckon the college ones lining the streets, flag them down, usher them into SUVs for hair weaves, high heels, or school fee. You are going to America now. Forget who you were and think only of who the visa you hold says you are. Your entrance in that place is a gift. It is a present many of us can't even hope to open. Live quiet here. Make something useful of yourself and for all of our daughters to follow. Be something more than breast and butt and a taut stomach for gluttonous men to rest their woolly heads. Daughters, we send you off. Hearts heavy like pregnant gut, like swollen Liberian plums. We have sown our wishes in the seams of your flesh. Your skin will grow so tough that jawbones will break when they try to gnaw. You are our map, and when you return, we will study you. For now, we send you off, clutching our country cloth. Our mouths follow you, daughters, lovingly arced in oval pleas of go, go. So my last piece I'm going to share with you this evening, it's called Monuments to Brown Boys. And it was really written in collaboration with an artist working on a local monument here in Germantown. And I'm going to share this now. Monuments to Brown Boys. The artist installed a mirror over the monument, and the people have come to gawk. Rubberneckers wonder what was there before. You have come too, laying in the cut, statue still for seconds, your reflection edging off a 20-foot high bronze looking glass. You are an alluring hunk of stone, beguiling me. Yes, you, brown boy, rough cut, monolith, I see you. You are a low slung, jean wearing, grandmother greeting pillar, an obelisk marking the entrance to your hood. You need to be somebody's memorial. And not only when you laid out and lowered in the dirt, a cold slab, your footstone, your pillow, a marble headrest of past tense. He was, he once, he lived. No, you are now and present, alive and in color. And you need to be somebody's shrine, somebody's testament, somebody's tribute in this city. You have to be carved, stretched, and erect, a column to buttress boogeymen, the phantoms they say you imagine, the specters and goblins who told bullets and policies and laws that encase you. You need to be somebody's memento. Look how you're beaming off that seeing glass. I'm catching your shine. Look at that swagger you're carrying, hoodie wearing, fresh fade having, full teeth grinning. You need to be somebody's something to fight for, somebody's celebration, somebody's stone turned monument, carved and smooth, somebody's masterpiece in this city.
How beautiful and apt. Thank you so much, Trapeta, for sharing your time and your thoughts and the power of your words. Until next time, be well.